Hello, everyone, and welcome to a Founders Fireside Chat. We are moments away from a very special conversation with Cliff Leaf, Editor-in-Chief of Fortune, and Michael J. Fox and Debi Brooks, co-founders of the Michael J. Fox Foundation. We are delighted to be visiting with you virtually, especially during a time when we are not able to meet in person. We hope you are cozy and ready for a great conversation. I'll just cover a few housekeeping items. First, you are in a one-way viewing experience. You may notice that your camera is off and your mic is muted. This setting will allow you to see and hear the event uninterrupted, but we do invite you to submit questions. You'll notice there is a Q&A box near the middle of your screen. You can type your questions here and we'll respond directly to as many as possible. We encourage you to do so. Finally, we've posted more information about ways to get involved with the Fox Foundation. Refer to a box on your screen called Resource List for more. With that, we'll let Michael and Debi and Cliff take it away.
Hi, Michael and Debi. It's so great to be talking with you again on this very auspicious occasion, 20-year anniversary since you started the foundation.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah. If you take yourself back in time, Michael, what's the sort of first thought that comes into your mind?
Well, it was interesting. The first thing I thought was I want to create a foundation that focuses on research. I'd been very quickly thrown into the pot when I announced that I had Parkinson's. I immediately became taken in by this community and different organizations, and I thought there was a need for one that focused purely on research and it had no endowment. Just money came in and money went out. The science was ahead of the money, would catch up with the science. And I found Debi, who had a similar. She saw that. I talked to her and I said, this person can make that work. This person can take this vague idea of something and help form it into a vehicle, move forward and do that. What surprised me about, jumping ahead, what surprised me about what we've become is we become so much more patient-based than I originally. Not that it wasn't always in service of the patient. It always was, but we didn't realize the patient could be such a big part of their own rescue.
Yeah, you really hit the nail on the head with this idea of being patient-focused, but also with the fact that you and Debi have created something really remarkable. I mean, just to throw out a number there, you have raised and put to good use in the research community $1 billion, or very close to that sum, which has led to a lot of the success that you've had in recent years. I think it's something like 17 drug approvals since 2014. Is that right, Debi?
Yeah.
That's right. And
not just drug approvals, I should say, drug and device approvals, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And, I think if we trying to put ourselves back where we were when we started, it was impossible to know what this could become. I mean, I think it's fair to say Michael and I are both pretty wicked optimists. He gets paid to write books about it. He's better at talking about it than I am. But I don't think we could have imagined what we were tapping into. And I think there was scientific opportunity for sure. And our approach, which was novel and was bringing real value to what was going on in the field at the time, our approach definitely unlocked some potential. But it's clear to me that particularly Michael, as a patient and in dialogue directly with the rest of the community, we've been able to just tap in to such a desire and a need and people who are just compelled to be part of getting involved. And I have to say, it's so uncommon in a disease community for folks. People don't get diagnosed with things and look for a nonprofit to get involved with, and yet we really see that to the tunes of hundreds of thousands, several million, in fact, Parkinson's patients and family members who've stepped up and they've just wanted to be part of this. And that combination of this opportunity in science and the funds that we've been able to galvanize through so many different sources and the generosity of so many people, tapping that that patient and community energy, it's magic. It really is. I mean, we might have thought we would be good at one or two of those things, but to have all those three things come together, it's been it's really helped transform the field today versus where it was a couple decades ago.
You know, I want to get back to that issue of optimism, which really is a superpower. About a year ago, I did a profile of Bill and Melinda Gates, and I set out trying to talk about malaria and polio eradication and the work that their foundation had done. And they just kept coming back to the power of optimism. And, you know, this is something that has driven you, Michael, and you, Debi, you know, for decades. Talk a little bit about how you incorporate that superpower into the foundation.
Well, you know, it's funny. I just wrote this book, probably No Time Like the Future. It's called, and then I write about it. I write about a series of health issues that overriding Parkinson's, which I kind of reached detente with. It allows me to do what I need to do, and I allow it to do what it does. And 30-year agreement, and we're like a married couple. But I had a series. I had spinal tumor, and I had to learn to walk again. And I learned to walk again, and then I fell and shattered my arm. And I found myself sitting underneath a phone that I couldn't reach to get help, getting mad at myself and saying, "This is how. If I'm in the lemonade business, I'm out of the lemonade business. And how can I tell people that optimism is a panacea when I don't feel that way?" And I went through this moment, this crisis of not appreciating, not being able to be optimistic, not be able to get into that place. And then I realized, over time, I learned to be about gratitude, and then gratitude makes optimism sustainable. If you're grateful for the opportunities you have, you're grateful for what you've been given to do work-wise. If you're grateful for the opportunities that exist, you'll be optimistic. If you just find those moments of those areas where I don't know. I always feel like you flip the coin 100 times, you're going to come up heads 51.
Right. And, you know, you've been able to tap into that other superpower, which is your patient community, and to really, you know, leverage their knowledge. I mean, and that's what's so important, is that you're not just asking people to, you know, be vessels for, you know, clinical trials, although that's clearly important, but to share their knowledge, to share their wisdom, to share their experience of living with this disease. You know, Michael, you said, you know, you can have 10,000 scientists, you know, studying this thing forever, and they really won't understand what Parkinson's is.
We know, Parkinson's patients know, our experts at it. We can't put it into words. We can't make it accessible to other people necessarily. But we have the knowledge, and we know what it's like. There was a guy I talked on the phone with. I did an interview with him. Similar, sitting right here doing it to Zoom, and he had a nephew that was 29 years old, diagnosed at 29, and he said, "What would you say to him?" And I said, "Well, I was diagnosed at 29. It was 30 years ago. So my 29 is different than his 29. But his 29 is going to see a cure. Like, I mean, I hope I see a cure in my life, but he definitely is." So what would you tell my nephew? And I said, "Tell him he's gonna be around when we figure this out, and he's gonna be a young man, relatively young man, and that's exciting." It's so important that people feel that they have a way to, like I said, be part of their own rescue, be part of their own.
Yeah.
We give them all the tools to do it. We've developed that over time, and it's been really astounding.
Yeah, I mean, you're giving people agency, you know, and as you say, in their own rescue. And one of the ways in which you're really making use of this patient, you know, these colleagues, these collaborators, is through the Parkinson's Progression Markers Initiative. And I'm just going to say PPMI, it's just so much easier. But this is this robust database in which you're looking for, you know, biomarkers of the disease that can be identified before it manifests in people, when of course, much of the damage in terms of destroying those dopamine-producing neurons has already been done. Debi, talk a little bit about what you're looking for in those biomarkers.
Well, it's funny because our early strategy was to fund high-risk ideas, hoping they could become new therapies. And it did not take us long. I mean, a matter of months before this chorus of this need for biomarkers became clear. And working into our priorities almost since the very beginning has been this search for biomarkers. And it's a broad topic, and we've gone after it a lot of different ways. But in PPMI in particular, we're able to, we've been studying the disease by tracking people at the very beginning of their diagnosis. And there's a lot to learn, particularly in the earliest months when they may not be on medication. But in some cases, we've tracked people now for over 8 years. There's so much data that has come from that process and from the gift given by those participants in particular. About 1,200 people have been in PPMI 1.0. We're about to launch 2.0, and we'll be more than quadrupling the size. So it's extraordinary. But that study, through neuroimaging, through clinical exams, through biosamples collected, and it's just been it's definitely the biggest open source database about Parkinson's patients and controls ever assembled. And in it, we've already learned so much, not tools that are getting used today in trials where we're trying to understand how to interfere with the disease process, but also more and more data pointing us to the things that we might be able to do to predict who's going to get Parkinson's. And so studies like this become the kind of investment that help every single therapeutic idea get a better shot. And it's one example, in this case, a small number of people, relatively small, where we've gone so deep over many years with very high standardization. And then we've kind of complemented it at the other extreme with a platform like Fox Insight, where 50,000 people have just self-reported on their own experience with Parkinson's disease. And in both of these platforms, we have genetic data, and we just have, there's so much now. There's been an explosion of data, and that I think is poised to really accelerate our disease understanding. And that's so important in a condition like Parkinson's that's highly varied person to person. And so it's, like Michael has said, we can bring together all the most amazing scientists in the world to have all these great ideas, but until we get the real news and the real understanding and the detail, the excruciating detail of the lived experience from Parkinson's patients directly, we're not really going to be able to get to the bottom of this variability. And that remains one of the biggest challenges to getting more of these new therapies over the goal line.
You also have an advantage in the sense that every study that you name with the word Fox in it sounds pretty cool. So Fox Insight, it's like the Born Supremacy or Born, anything you put after that's going to sound pretty cool. Which
it's better than Brooks. You're right.
the Fox Insights, but this is incredible. 50,000 individuals, and they're doing this online, right? They're self-reporting online, which is
self-reporting, and it's like Debbie said, the lived experience, sharing the lived experience. It has all kinds of information and clues, and as you get this sort of holistic ball of data, I mean. What you said about it, like what Debbie was saying about all the data we collected and created and made available. Also, at the same time we were doing that over the years, the ability to crunch that data and do the math on those numbers and process that stuff has also grown with us. So it's now just there's no end to the amount of information we can make available. We can extract, make available, and provide to the people who need it. But the PPMI thing, the biomarker thing, is really amazing. It's so compelling that if we can just find that thing, that whatever it is, whether it's blood or whether it's skin or whatever it's matter they use to find these answers, well, I mean, we can solve that. We can treat it prophylactically. It's not a cure, but you stop progression, you stop symptoms, and you halt symptoms before they begin, and help progression. Be major.
One of the things that you've done, Michael, and which I personally admire you for greatly, and I know millions of others do, is you've made life for those with Parkinson's sort of easier, just emotionally in some ways, recognizing that there is this very vast community of people who experience similar things in their life. And one of the things you like, or have done, I should say, is to sort of bust some of those taboos or challenge them, with humor. I was thinking about, that role you played in Curb Your Enthusiasm, where you hand Larry David the soda and it's all shaken up.
Can I get you a soda or something, Larry?
Oh, sure, that'd be great. The thing is, Hitler really ruined that mustache for everybody. Because it's an interesting mustache, and now nobody could wear it, Oh, thanks. Oh, Jesus Christ! What the hell?
What?
Did you shake that up on purpose?
Parkinson's.
And it's like there's these moments like that where you're allowing people to be okay with all of it.
We're human beings first, and the biggest part of my life is my wife and my kids and my dog and my friends and my partners and the things we create and the things that we experience, and it's not. I don't wake up. I'm a guy with Parkinson's. Now I'm going to go about my day about Parkinson's. I have Parkinson's, so it influences how I go about my day, influences the decisions I make, and but it's not where I start. And one of the things when I first realized my diagnosis, one of the motivators behind it was that I started meeting a lot of people in the young Parkinson's community. Young onset Parkinson's community. I used to think about Parkinson's as being an old person's disease, and most people thought that. But I found this dynamic community group of people that wanted to. They were so afraid to they didn't want to get fired. They didn't want to lose their insurance. They didn't want to be stigmatized. But when they saw it was okay to come out, so to speak, they found their strength in their voice and their willingness to. I mean, people went from like within a year. Like I can think of a couple of Jimmy Choi, for example. People went from doing nothing and hiding in the disease and not letting anyone know, and at some point it was going to betray itself by movements or behaviors or whatever, and then just dreading that day, to finding a place in this community and stretching out and being big fundraisers and being advocates and being spokesmen and spokeswomen and it's one of one of the things I'm most proud of.
Yeah.
Proud is the wrong word, because it's not about me. It's just an extraordinary thing to be able to witness.
Well, it's great to see you celebrate that. I think you should be proud of it, because I think it's a huge and important contribution to the world. When I last spoke to you and Debi, you talked about breaking down life into choices and circumstances. And since our conversation, I've actually used that framing in my life. Okay, well, that's a choice, that's a circumstance. And it's been really helpful. I imagine that's going to be a helpful way of looking at the world for so many people with Parkinson's and not.
It's a little chicken or the egg kind of. It's what comes first, the choice or the circumstance. But through the cycle you're going. But the choices. The thing about choices, it's an action. It's an action. You can choose to. You can have Parkinson's and you can deal with it on a day-to-day basis and let it be what it is. You can choose to shape it. And use it as a force. You get a whole new set of tools. Like you can't look at yourself the way you used to. And you find that, like I said, when I started playing these characters with disabilities, I said, I'm going to put Parkinson's, I'm going to bring it into the family business. I'm going to put it to work. I'm going to, the feelings behind any disability or any change in function in your body over the course of your life creates, whether it's OCD or it's paralysis or whatever, it's the same tools you use to deal with it. You accept it and you move on. And that was a big part of, I think it's a big part of what everyone goes through with Parkinson's. If you can accept it, then you can look at it, and then it is what it is. It's no bigger than that. It just is what it is.
I think this is really important, because even when we spoke before about optimism, we're not, we're not rose-colored glasses kind of people. We're highly pragmatic. And I think, and yet we believe in the power of taking action, and we believe in the energy that comes from making choices and being engaged, and we see it firsthand. I mean, it's really stunning, and it's such a point of privilege that I've had, is to be able to see the relief and the kind of empowerment that comes when people realize that there's a whole community here working on this. And I spend a good part of my week every week meeting people who've just been diagnosed. And it is jarring, it is scary, it is overwhelming. And yet, as I know those people over months or years or even longer, many for 2 decades now, it's remarkable to see how they have found their way. And it's not, their challenges, Mike speaks so beautifully about this in his personal experience of just giving Parkinson's just the room it needs, no more, no less. And I think that's an art one has to strive for, but that sense of how people in this community get that lift is really motivating. And in fact, actually this year, and as part of really, I think, catalyzed by the whole world of COVID, we decided to launch a new platform. And we've been thinking about this, but we just hadn't gotten there. And I think it kind of speaks to another source of energy that comes from the community. We're going to be, it hasn't been named yet, but so we call it the Buddy Network, but basically a platform where too many Parkinson's patients are isolated. They don't know a single person who's like them. They've maybe never met another Parkinson's patient, or there's something about their particular profile where they just wish they could meet, talk to someone. And sometimes it's about someone in my community so I can sit down and have coffee once in a while. And sometimes it's about someone at my age who's going through the same things with career and family challenges. And sometimes it's about someone who's thinking about starting a new treatment or participating in a clinical trial. And so like me could mean anything to people, but to be able to connect people even one at a time, it's magical. And so we're just to witness the how illuminating those connections can be, and how it seems like something quite simple, yet we really, it's at our peril if we underestimate how beneficial it can really be for folks. And I think that's, we can look at a lot of milestones as we reflect about where we are today, and be proud of, certainly, I think, galvanizing the philanthropy capital and prioritizing it and putting it to work with urgency and impact and accountability and sharing, but doing that in the presence of and with the assistance of a growing community, I think has really put it into the kind of relief that just makes it that magic. And I think, Michael, you in particular, your courage to come into this and take this on, I mean, it's crazy, but it has been something that has already transformed what's possible, and I think it will continue to do so for sure.
Again, one of the things that I'll allow that when I came out and it came out with my diagnosis, it was compelling. It was a compelling story. People were interested in it and followed it, and that gave me, when I realized I wasn't kind of awkward gawking, but just concerned looking at me and observing me, I realized that I could do something positive. And now we have all these people, we have all these compelling stories. They're all compelling. And it's times a million. And my story is just the first of, in this context, the first of all of them. But so many have followed, and those stories are just as compelling and just as important as mine. And to give people a chance to voice that has really been a tremendous privilege.
You mentioned a lot of great C's: the power of compelling stories, the power of connections, personal connections, the power of community, the power of coming out with Parkinson's and sharing your story. And one last one, you mentioned choices. And, we have a big election coming up. Just In just a few words, could you tell me, both of you, what you're looking for in the next administration, in the next Congress? What sort of help does your community need?
Well, I'm going to resist the urge to be political. I just deal with it. I would like to, obviously what we would like is a proactive NIH and other areas of government support for research freedom, for taking the initiative to answer some of these problems. I mean, we could. It always amazed me that we don't have more moonshots. That we don't have more. Not literally moonshots, but figurative moonshots in areas whether it's cancer, whether it's Parkinson's, whether it's ALS, or I mean, I just lost a friend, a very dear friend to ALS, and having Parkinson's, I had some way to relate to her, but this is not. You don't die from Parkinson's. You die with Parkinson's until we figure it out, but you don't die from it. But ALS is a cruel disease, and I sat there thinking, like, how does this happen? Why is this happening? Why can't we come up with an answer for this? And then it brings me back to Parkinson's. Why can't we come up with an answer? We can. And we will. And the ALS people are working on it. We're working on it, and we're all working on it. And I just feel like there's something that we just haven't hit lid on yet, and it's all gonna go like dominoes. We're gonna figure this out.
For me, a couple things I would say on a personal level, but also I think it's core to the foundation. We believe in science, and so putting science, letting science guide us and teach us the way, and then and believing in the challenges that science also show us. Not everything is obvious right away. It might take some time. You need things to be safe. It's you want them to make a difference and be efficacious, and just the process of science, the power of science, the expense of science. The government needs to be and continues to be an important driver globally of breakthroughs, or the potential for breakthroughs. We do have a webinar that'll be coming this month, October 15th, and we'll be talking about the kind of things to watch in the election and post-election that'll be important for the Parkinson's community. And it's a lot of things. It's not just about science, it's about access to care. It's about increased access to telemedicine. There are a lot of things policy-wise that I think are important for Parkinson's community today and will continue to be so.
Thank you so much, Debi Brooks and Michael J. Fox, for that incredible conversation.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Cliff.
Wow, that was such a special and meaningful conversation. What a fantastic way to wrap up our Celebration of Science weekend. Speaking of which, congratulations to the over 5,000 runners and walkers who together helped raise over $1 million for Parkinson's research in our first ever virtual 5K, 10K event. For information about more ways to get involved, go to michaeljfox.org/here. You will find virtual events and educational resources at michaeljfox.org/here. Thank you for tuning in. We look forward to being together online again soon. We hope you have a great week.